When we think about bank robbery, scenes of masked bandits, high-stakes getaways, and inevitable arrests come to mind. The kind of drama that has you gripping the armrest in a heist movie or binge-watching a true crime documentary. However, in a few extraordinary cases, individuals have managed to walk away with millions without facing any legal consequences. These aren't your typical heists involving guns, getaway cars, or secret tunnels beneath the vault. Instead, they're more like chess matches, involving a mix of legal loopholes, institutional failures, and sheer audacity. It's not so much about breaking the law as it is about bending it until it practically snaps. In these cases, the line between clever opportunism and outright crime becomes so blurry that even the courts have a hard time deciding what's legal and what's not. One of the most jaw-dropping examples of this is the case of Hai Jai Jin, a Chinese national living in New Zealand who stumbled upon a banking error that most of us could only dream about. In 2009, Jin requested a $100,000 overdraft from Westpac Bank to help fund his struggling business. Instead, due to a colossal mistake by the bank, he was accidentally granted a $10 million overdraft. That's a few too many zeros for any customer service representative to explain away. Recognizing the opportunity of a lifetime, Jin and his girlfriend Kara Herring withdrew and transferred nearly $6.8 million overseas before fleeing New Zealand. For a while, they lived the high life, hopping between countries and spending lavishly. The legal twist here is what makes this case so fascinating. While the couples was eventually caught years later, the primary challenge for prosecutors was proving that Jin's actions were more than just an opportunistic response to a banking error. Jin's defense was simple but surprisingly effective. He claimed he believed the funds were a legitimate loan. While he was eventually convicted of theft and money laundering, his girlfriend managed to avoid conviction entirely due to insufficient evidence of her intent. The case exposed significant legal gray areas in dealing with banking errors and highlighted the fine line between seizing an opportunity and committing a crime. Legal analysts pointed out that if Jin had chosen not to flee and instead negotiated with the bank, he might have escaped any charges at all. The most intriguing part of this case was the role the bank itself played in the confusion. Financial experts argued that the lack of clear internal protocols for handling such significant errors contributed directly to the debacle. In a way, it was almost as if the bank had robbed itself. The incident led to a global review of internal bank policies, showing how procedural flaws could potentially allow someone to walk away with millions without ever having to pick a lock or point a gun. Another unbelievable example of a legal bank robbery comes from the world of lottery system. Eddie Tipton, a former security director at the Multi-State Lottery Association, found a way to game the system in a way that was, at least initially, completely legal. Tipton was responsible for ensuring the security of the lottery software, which made him the last person you'd suspect of fraud. But by installing a self-written code into the random number generators, he ensured that specific combinations would win jackpots. Over several years, Tipton and associates claimed millions in lottery winnings across multiple states, all without triggering any alarms. The legal challenge? Initially, there were no laws explicitly addressing the manipulation of RNGs by internal staff. In other words, he wasn't breaking the rules because the rules didn't even exist yet. It was only after a particularly suspicious claim involving a hot dog purchase at a convenience store and a bizarre anonymous attempt to collect a jackpot that authorities started to unravel the scheme. Despite eventually being convicted of fraud, the complexity of Tipton's operation and the absence of specific legal frameworks initially left prosecutors scrambling for charges. The case exposed a massive loophole in lottery regulations and led to a comprehensive overhaul of security procedures. Then there's the case of Dan Saunders, an Australian bartender who stumbled upon an ATM glitch that allowed him to live out the kind of fantasy most of us have while staring at our dwindling bank balances. In 2011, Saunders discovered that by exploiting the timing of balance updates during maintenance periods, he could withdraw unlimited funds despite having next to nothing in his account. Over several months, he withdrew nearly $1 $1.6 million, spending it on luxury vacations, parties, and even paying off friends' debt. For a while, there were no charges pressed because the authorities couldn't quite figure out what if he did was actually a crime. The withdrawals technically occurred with the bank's implicit permission due to the software glitch, leading to a debate about liability and the definition of theft in the digital age. It was only after Saunders turned himself in, overwhelmed by guilt, that he had faced legal consequences. But the case sparked a broader discussion about how poorly prepared banks are for dealing with digital vulnerabilities. Speaking of exploiting legal gray areas, the sovereign citizen movement has taken this to a whole new level. One of the most infamous cases involved Winston Shrout, who issued hundreds of fake financial documents to banks and the IRS, claiming millions in debt elimination and financial gain. Shrout's defense was built on obscure interpretations of trust law and the Uniform Commercial Code, UCC, effectively bogging down the courts for years. For a long time, prosecutors struggled to pin charges on him due to the convoluted legal theories and the genuine gray areas in interpreting UCC clauses. Although he was eventually convicted, his lengthy evasion of justice highlighted how manipulations of poorly understood legal doctrines could delay or even nullify charges. It's a bizarre reminder that sometimes the most effective way to rob a bank is with a pen, not a gun. The collapse of the Soviet Union also produced some of the most baffling cases of legal bank robbery. During the chaotic period, Vladimir Levin, a Russian hacker, managed to siphon $10 million from Citibank accounts using primitive internet tools. Due to the geopolitical confusion and the lack of clear international banking laws at the time, Levin initially faced no charges. It wasn't until years later that the U.S. authorities managed to extradite him. For a while, Levin had effectively pulled off one of the world's first major cyber heists without technically breaking any enforceable law. His case exposed just how vulnerable financial institutions were, and in many ways still are, to cyber attacks that fall into legal gray zone. So what's the lesson here? Sometimes the most successful heists aren't about brute force, but about finding the right loophole and exploiting it before anyone realizes what's happening. It turns out the sharpest weapon you can wield isn't a gun or a getaway car, but a deep understanding of how to bend the rules without technically breaking them. It's almost like playing a game where you've memorized every glitch, every exploit, and every overlooked detail that lets you win big while everyone else is stuck playing by the book. The idea of legally robbing a bank might sound like the plot of a Hollywood thriller, but these cases proving that the right mix of knowledge, timing, and audacity, it's entirely possible to outwit even the most fortified financial institutions. Financial and legal systems, for all their complexity and layers of securities, are still full of gaps ripe for exploitation. The more rules we make, the more loopholes there are to find. And the people who pulled off these heists aren't just criminals, they're opportunists who understand the fine print better than the lawyers who wrote it. From software glitches and contract loopholes to outdated regulations and jurisdictional challenges, these stories serve as a reminder that sometimes the greatest heists aren't about breaking the law, they're about knowing it better than anyone else. It's almost poetic when you think about it. The very systems designed to prevent crime end up enabling it, all because someone took the time to read between the lines. What's even more fascinating is the moral gray area these cases expose. Sure, some of these people eventually got caught, but in almost every story, there was a moment where it looked like they might just get away with it. These banks made the mistakes, the outdated laws, and the security systems that were supposed to protect us, they all failed, sometimes spectacularly. And in a strange way, you can't help but admire the sheer audacity of it all. These cases force us to question who the real villains are, the people exploiting the flaws, or the institutions that let those flaws exist in the first place. Maybe the real lesson isn't just about finding loopholes, but about understanding how fragile and imperfect our systems really are. Because if people can walk away with millions just by understanding the rules a little better than the rest of us, what does that say about how secure our money really is, or how fair the system is to begin with? It's a chilling thought. For every security measure, every law, and every safeguard, there might just be a loophole waiting to be found by someone clever enough to look. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of legal loopholes and high-stakes heists, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe for more mind-blowing stories, and tap the notification bell so you'll never miss an update. Let us know in the comments which case you found the most shocking, and if you ever stumbled across a legal loophole yourself, don't worry, we won't tell. And hey, if you're feeling inspired to do a little research of your own, just remember, knowledge might be power, but it's also how you stay out of jail. Thanks for watching Hammer's Law. I'm Darryl Isaacs, and until next time, stay curious and maybe double check your bank balance.